All right, this is the Brown County Election Board. It's the question and comment session number one regarding whether and how Brown County should adopt vote centers. President Mark Williams, the chairman of the board, and Rick Kelly and Carlita Banks, also the other two members of the board, are present, as well as members of the committee, the exploratory committee. So we'll open by saying the pledge. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. That's better. I started buying garments and with the major criteria as to whether they have a pocket, put my reading glasses. I'm going to give an introduction and then we'll open the floor. The board made up of Carlita Banks, the county clerk, and Rick Kelly representing the Democratic Party, and I have appointed a study committee to participate in the vote center planning process. The committee is responsible to develop a vote center plan, taking into account the where and how vote centers would be recommended, taking into account the location of vote centers, the proposed staffing, the layout of the voting area in each location, and the equipment to be used. Members of the board and the vote center study committee with me today are seated in the room. If you're a member of the study committee, would you please raise your hand? So, so we have Amy Oliver, Laura Rudd, Darren Bird, and Sherry Frank. Did I miss anybody who was a member of the committee? I'm sorry, miss, and you got missed once before. Mark Bowman is also here. Sorry for that.
It's all right.
I'm
happy to be overlooked.
Yeah, it's funny how that goes along as life goes on. Now, the purpose of this committee is not to suggest a process to gain partisan advantage. Rather, it is focused on all the voters of Brown County determining whether vote centers are desirable, and if so, how they should be structured. You are an integral part of the planning process. The board has allocated 3 dates for questions and comments as to the concept and the plan for vote centers. This session will be followed by a session here in the Salmon Room at 6 p.m. on May 22nd. Followed by a final session at 2 p.m. on June 18th. Your comments will be taken into account in the study committee plans to present the preliminary plan on June 25th. In that June 25th meeting, we will take only written comments, and that's provided in the statutes. A fundamental goal of the election board is to better utilize the schools on election day. The school buildings are strategically located, have well-lit and level paved parking lots, and are compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. The committee recognizes that the Lakes region is geographically unique, and therefore it is anticipated we will suggest that the Church of the Lakes be included as well. Fortunately, the Board of Education has declared that the schools will not be open on election days commencing in 2026, thereby making the schools available. Amy Oliver represents the school board on the committee and is chair of our subcommittee examining locations and layouts. Thanks to the school board and to Superintendent Emily Tracy for their cooperation and civic concern. So what is the difference between vote centers and traditional precinct located polling places? As we currently operate, we have 11 precincts at 9 polling places. At 9 polling places. Each of the Fruitdale Fire Department building and Helmsburg Fire Department building house 2 precincts in rather cramped quarters. Each precinct on primary and general election day is staffed by at least 1 inspector, 2 judges, and 2 poll clerks. There may be also 2 sheriffs per precinct. You may only vote at the polling place location for your precinct, and your precinct is determined based on where you live in the county. Vote centers allow anyone registered to vote in Brown County to vote at any vote center. Vote centers work like branch banks. You may usually do your banking in Nashville, but one day you may be in Franklin and need a bank. You need not drive back to Nashville. You can visit the Franklin branch of your bank. So with vote centers within Brown County, you may vote at any vote center from election day to election day, wherever you may then find a location most convenient. Another goal of vote centers is to consolidate voting locations. Utilizing buildings most advantageous to the voting process, with that process therein laid out in the most efficient manner to facilitate speed, accuracy, and speed of voting. Vote centers also may serve more voters with fewer overall poll officials, but that is not assured. One thing is the same. Your precinct will not change. Only your choice of location change from election to election. One other thing to mention. If you've been following the news for the past couple of months, you know that there's been some doubt whether the county would be required to change the electronic poll books currently in use, as they were thought not to be supported in the future by our vendor. That concern is now removed for the 2026 election cycle, but we are unclear beyond whether our vendor will thereafter continue. If it is necessary to change vendors, I can tell you that the election board would then recommend a substitute to the commissioners. Electronic poll books are a requirement for vote centers, as it is important to assure a voter does not go from vote center location to location on election day, voting in each. The committee does not intend to recommend any change to the method of voting or the voting equipment now in use, although the addition of individual ballot printers at each vote center is being contemplated. So now I will open the floor for your comments and questions. Please come to the lectern, speak into the microphone, and give us your name and address. If you are not speaking in your capacity as a voter in Brown County, you may be heard if we have time at the end of the session. We are scheduled to go until 3 p.m. You will have no more than 5 minutes to speak. I will stop you at that time. If you don't need 5 minutes, thank you. That will better assure the opportunity for more voters to speak. Does anyone wish to address the committee?
Is this for questions?
Yes, ma'am. For questions or comments. If you want to do that, you need to go stand at the Give us your name and your address, please.
Joy Martin, 1531 Harrison Ridge Road. Nashville, Indiana.
Thank you.
I have several questions. One of which is, how do the vote centers communicate to each other to identify that a person has already voted?
Through the poll books.
And how is that communication conducted?
Once a voter checks in on the poll book, if they were to go to another location and present their ID and the clerk tried to check them in at a second location, it would show that the voter has already voted.
Yes, my question is, what network is going to be used to
No
conduct that? No network, okay. What communication protocol?
I'm sorry, in reference to what communication?
How does
Between the
one
poll.
poll center communicate to another poll center?
Are your poll books hooked up to the internet? Are they using a cellular communication path?
They are on a secure standalone Wi-Fi connection provided by our MiFi devices. Each are independently connected,
Okay, MiFi then is internet.
correct?
So if that communication is disrupted, how does it handle that disruption and detect someone has voted at more than one location?
The MiFi internet connection is primarily utilized so that I can monitor those poll books from a central location. The Wi-Fi is not necessary for a voter to check in. You can still check in voters, and again, it will still show somewhere else that if they went to a second or a third location, it would show that they have already voted.
Okay, if that communication is disrupted, how does that manage that in response after it has
The poll
recovered?
books
from
will
that
still function
disruption?
as they should to check voters in.
So there will be no way to dismiss a particular vote if that person hasn't been able to vote multiple times because of that internet disruption.
The internet has nothing to do with the voter checking in. The only reason,
You just
If
said it
there-
allows you
if-
to check in.
no, it allows me to monitor the poll books from a central location to see if there's a problem. However, it does not need the internet for a voter to check in.
If it's received multiple check-ins, then it would need that internet to verify that.
That is updated through our vendor in Florida. It's not monitored, it's not done here locally. Again, the internet connection is so that I can see if there's a problem with the poll book or how many voters have voted and what's going on. It doesn't keep somebody from checking in, and it will definitely still detect if a voter has tried to check in multiple locations. You don't need the internet connection to do that.
Unless there's a disruption. Next question, what is the cost comparison between these vote center poll books and a traditional paper ballot or paper poll book?
And I think the board agrees, it's not really a matter of cost between paper and electronic poll books. If you have paper poll books, what's going to keep somebody from voting multiple times?
They would have to vote at one precinct and they would
And how do
check
you
in right
detect that?
there with your poll book, your paper poll book.
Paper poll books?
Yeah, I used to vote on a paper poll book. And when I checked in, I had to sign in and there was one place for my name and I signed in and that was it. So what is the cost difference?
Well, the cost difference is frankly a little bit hard to calculate right now. But if you utilized paper poll books, then you would not have the cost of electronic poll books, which cost are twofold. One is in the acquisition cost. The poll books that we have right now are virtual. Their payment terms are virtually up. So we well along with that, and then there's a license fee. So there's that with the paper poll book. You don't have the technical cost, but you'll have a material increase in personnel cost, connected with elections, because, when paper poll books were used, a great deal, there was no such thing in Indiana as early voting. And so you'd have to update the early voting and, through the clerk's office. So there'd be a great deal of cost connected with personnel. And then on election day, there'd be a great deal of cost. And then we would know there'd be no way of meeting the timelines that are required by the Secretary of State with paper poll books. I think your time has expired. Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Still on?
Still on.
I just had a question.
State your name and your address, please.
Sherry Frank, 27212 Oak Road, Nashville. I just wanted to ask you to repeat the last part of your introductory comments. I didn't catch it after you talked about the electronic poll. Didn't catch your comment, sorry.
What part of my comments did you not catch?
The very end, after you talked about electronic poll books are required for vote centers to ensure voters will vote once.
Let's see. I said the committee does not intend to recommend any change to the method of voting or the voting equipment now in use, although the addition of individual paper ballot printers at each vote center is being contemplated. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Dan Patrick, 222 West Main Street here in Nashville, Indiana. One of the questions I had was, seems like you hear there's always a big deal made about signatures on the early ballots, on the envelopes matching what's on record at clerk's office. And when I went out to early vote this last time, and I went to do my signature, it didn't look anything like it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's not my signature. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. So I'm a little confused on if I vote at a voting center on an electronic device and it doesn't even look like my signature, even though they looked at my driver's license, is there any problem with that later on when they count the ballots?
Well, if you, did you register online?
No, I believe I registered at the clerk's office like years ago.
Okay. Well, sometimes there is a material difference between the way your signature appears on the poll book versus the way your signature is today. Or it may have been that when that signature was picked up, that for whatever reason, your signature was a bit of a scrawl.
It was.
That's that, and then when you sign that, then they'll look at your driver's license as well. And it's up at that stage, it's those little distinctions that it's up to the job of the poll clerks to determine if you are the person that you say you are, and that your registration matches up with you.
Okay.
So that's not, it's amazing how people will, sign one way one day and sign a little bit differently the next day. So that's not unusual. The problem that happens that we had happen at at early voting was, when, is the process of you signing the envelope and then both of the clerks signing the envelope with all the other stuff that's going on. I think it's important to note that vote centers have nothing to do with early voting. Vote centers only apply on election day, primary day, and on general election day. Other than if it's early voting and if it's walk-in early voting, you'll go to a single location, and we're working on the election board's working with the commissioners to find a little bit better location so that the confusion that you're talking about doesn't happen again.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Sherry Frank again.
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the signature, is there a procedure for voters to come in and update their signature so they don't run into any issues? I'm looking online and it says it's a good idea for people to come in and update their signature if their
They
signature
can,
has changed.
They can, but it isn't required. And, you know, there's a big difference between you signing your signature on a piece of paper and then trying to sign on those poll books. Sometimes the stylists work and sometimes they don't. And we've tried many different stylists to try to use, and our voters seem to find that just giving us some sort of signature with their finger seems to be the best way to do it. But they are welcome to come in and update their signature, but that again isn't going to guarantee that the poll book is going to match. Given in my office, but I'm always willing and there to help the voter in whatever manner they need.
Well, if the voter especially thinks that their signature looks differently than what they normally signed, that might be.
Usually what happens, the difference is not always, but usually what happens is that you have a signature on record that was signed lots on a piece of paper flat, and then when the voter comes in to sign the poll book, they're in a little bit more of a hurry, and that's what causes the difference. It can be the other way around, but if someone wants to come in and update their signature, they can.
Yeah, I wasn't clear if the problem was the way it went on the electronic poll book, or if it was different, if what was on file was different than the way she signs now. So, I mean, the other way that could become a problem is with absentee mail-in ballots. If the signature is not accurate for how you sign now, voters really should.
I think it's just a matter of a difference between paper or what they used at the time of signing it versus the electronic poll book. I can tell you whenever I run my credit card, my signature on their silly little block does not match how I would sign my signature on anything else.
And it matters also if the voter registered online and signed.
I think sometimes, like in early voting, you'll have somebody that doesn't realize signatures need to match when they, not early voting, but mail-in voting, the signature has to match what they had before, and you'll just see a scribble, and you have no idea from that scribble, is that the same person? I know we've had to return some of those to have them update that with the proper signature. Same thing as people age. We're always judging, and a bunch of board members will get together on mail-in ballots and have to determine whether to accept a signature or not. And a lot of times it's looking at an older person, how the signature has changed. So it's a judgment of the clerks or the election board.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Doug Cobble, Country Club Road, Nashville. I have a logistical question about the vote center. I think using the schools is a great idea. I worked as an election tech for 3 cycles, so I moved all the equipment, so I kind of understand. I'm curious, and this probably Mrs. Oliver probably would need to help with this one. When the equipment will be moved to the schools, it will really take 3 days. It's going to be moved there the day before the election, going to be there during the election, and then it's going to be moved the day after the election. I just want to make certain that the school realized what was going to be going on with all that.
We've met as a committee once already, and that particular item was discussed, and that's part of the mission of finding the proper location for the within the vote center buildings so that can be reasonably managed.
Very good. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, you got one question? Because you had your 5 minutes, but go, you got one more thing?
I got more.
Well, I'll give you one more question because you've had your 5 minutes.
Thank you. Joy Martin. For the vote centers to have ballot on demand printers, is that for all ballots? And if so, how will there be assurance that those ballot printers will work properly before the day of event? Because if they break down, in that sense, we won't be able to collect any ballots.
Well, you're right, if all of them break down, but remember, we have two different types of machines. Number one, we'll test the ballot on demand machines. They would connect to the electronic poll books. So they would be printing rather quickly. If one would happen to break down, we'll have spare. If all of the poll books at a particular vote center would, if all the printers at a particular vote center would break down, then we would move to the Freedom Vote machine, which is usually used for people with disabilities, but which is a process which uses the ticket that is printed with every ballot, or every time someone checks in, the ticket's printed, and they would take that ticket to the Freedom Vote machine and vote and put that ticket with the reader, and then they would receive the proper ballot. So all the Freedom Vote machines would be programmed to operate countywide, just like they are during early voting. So there's a couple of fail-safes there.
Related to that is, since it'll be a vote center and anyone can vote at the vote center from the county, there will be different ballots, possibly for every person. And how would you confirm to that voter that they have the right ballot? Because I know sometimes I have gone to vote and I'll be surprised by who's on the ballot. I was thinking it was somebody else, maybe a different precinct, maybe possibly even a different district.
Once you check in and the poll book recognizes what ballot you're supposed to have, that's when it triggers the printer to print your ballot and your ballot only. We're not going to print ballots in advance. So it will be as each voter comes in, and it will print uniquely to that voter's precinct.
See, I have a lot more confidence in a person creating a packet of ballots ahead of time and making sure they are correct for that precinct and
It would be the
whatnot.
clerk's responsibility to make sure that the right one
Computer
prints.
would do that for me.
Here's what I would see as an advantage. The poll book, it knows what precinct you're in, and it's going to print only a ballot for that precinct. If you do early voting, as we've done in the past, and we're pulling, we have all the precincts here, because in early voting, you can be Van Buren, Jackson, whatever. They're pulling a ballot and hopefully have the right one. So this is a better fail-safe mechanism with the poll book, ballot on demand printer, or even the freedom vote.
Well, in that case, it would be nice to have a printed ballot visible for that given precinct, district, what have you, so that you can make sure that the
Well,
one. that
there
was
there will be ballots, there will be
to
ballots.
change.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There will be ballots for each precinct posted on the wall. And you could take your ballot and walk over and make sure it matches up with the ballot that's posted on the wall.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? All right, thank you for coming in. You know, since there's no further questions, meeting's adjourned.